You are listening to Packers Talk Radio Network.
PackersTalk.com.
With the 21st pick in the 2014 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Ha-Ha Clinton Dix.
It's time for the Packers War Room Podcast.
Made me a believer into really thinking that the Packers really could run the table, and that was when I said right away, they're winning the NFC North.
The Bob Najori Nelson was just a moment that I'll never forget. For him to be able to get behind the corner and really just catch the prayer, essentially, was just quintessential Packers 2016.
Like I said, for this team to win 2 playoff games was just astounding with how beat up they were and the state of their defense, really.
And now, alongside Jacob Westendorf and Cody Bauer, here's your host of the Packers War Room Podcast, Ross Uglem.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the draft recap edition of the Packers Offseason War Room Podcast. I am your host, Ross Uglem. I'm a writer at Cheesehead TV. Joining me, as always, is Jacob Westendorf for FanRag. Jacob, how are we doing?
Doing well. Good to be back. One last go-around before we head into, I guess, preparation for the regular season. Off-season's pretty much winding down now, so talk about the guys that they've got. Less preview, more actual substance to what we got here. We know who the Packers have, and we can talk about who they have instead of who they might have.
And joining us as well, Cheesehead TV draft expert Cody Bauer. Cody, how are we?
Doing great, getting excited. Can't wait to talk about the 2018 NFL Draft. Let's do it, boys.
Not only that, but joining us as a special guest host for the wrap-up show, we have brought back Voch Lombardi. Voch, how's it going?
I have no idea what Marcellus Wallace looks like as Voch Lombardi. What's happening, man? Thanks for having me. We back like bra straps.
Alrighty, so let's dip real briefly into the non-draft news, and there isn't a whole lot to it. Jari Evans signed with the Packers. I believe it was the day before the draft to address the right guard position, in so much that the Packers didn't feel the need to draft an immediate starter at right guard, give him a little bit more flexibility. Long-time Milwaukee Journal Sentinel columnist Bob McGinn announced his retirement today. It kind of is what it is. Some people agreed with him, especially later on in his career. Some people disagreed with him. But Bob is without question not only a Packers media legend, but pretty much just a media legend, especially as beat writers go. So that's something that we just want to acknowledge on this show because, you know, we're all kind of doing the same thing, talking Packers, and there weren't a lot of people that were at least as knowledgeable about talking Packers as Bob. And then finally, though I don't think there'll be much steam to it, Elliot Wolf and Brian Gutekunst are being talked about for a GM job yet again. Both guys in the running, I think, to succeed Ted Thompson when he calls it a day. But they'll both be talked about for the Bills job, so just kind of prepare for that, Packers fans, because it is certainly coming down the pike. I'll just go with Cody and Jacob on this real briefly. The immediate reaction to the Jari Evans signing?
Loved it. It gave them flexibility as to, like you mentioned, what to do in the draft. They didn't have to reach on, say, Forrest Lamp, although I don't think they would have done that anyways. Gave him a chance to, say, in the first pick of the 4th round, draft Vince Beagle instead of having to draft a offensive lineman. Gave them an opportunity to really keep picking the best players available, and while he's not TJ Lang, he still has some gas left in the tank. I know that some people want to point to the fact that he couldn't make Seattle's roster. Seattle making a mistake with the offensive line is nothing new. I think that we should acknowledge that, and that should not – and Ross, you shared some pretty good clips. He's still a really good pass blocker, which is really what matters the most in this offense. So for 1 year, $2.25 million, which is all it ended up being according to just about everybody as they reported yesterday, I can't complain with that signing at all. It gives the Packers a stopgap at that position and maybe hoping they can find another long-term solution next year. But I can't complain at all with the signing.
Yeah, I think, you know, what you're going to end up with at right guard is sort of a David Bakhtiari situation from the first 2 years of his career, where excellent pass blocker, going to keep Rodgers clean, you just don't run behind him. And that's a weird thing to say for a right guard, especially, with a team with a right-handed quarterback. But it's possible that that's just going to be sort of the situation because he is a little bit more of a liability against the run than he was, of course, when he was an All-Pro. Cody, any differing thoughts on the Evans signing?
No, I can't disagree too much. We won't have to beat around too much about it. I think it's a great stopgap signing. For GM and Ted Thompson doesn't sign any free agents, he sure has been busy this offseason. I think he's been, adding great veterans here and there to the lineup to make a good run this year, actually.
Yeah, definitely a slightly different look from Ted, sort of that marriage that we were always hoping between what the Madden guys want to do, which is sign the best guy at every position, and what Ted normally does, which is do absolutely nothing. He sort of found that happy medium. Before we get into it here, guys, I had a chance to connect with Mike Renner of Pro Football Focus. He's a senior analyst over there this past weekend. We talked about their draft guide. I had a brief discussion just about kind of their philosophy and whatnot, and he agreed to sit down with me on Sunday night and discuss Green Bay's draft. And we've got a really, really great conversation here between he and I, and we're going to go ahead and play that for you right now. All right, guys, I am here with Mike Renner, senior analyst at Pro Football Focus. Mike, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. How are you doing on this Sunday afternoon?
I'm doing great, Ross. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here after the draft. It was a fun weekend.
So explain kind of how you got into the business, how you got involved with Pro Football Focus, just briefly for our listeners who aren't listening to your podcast, and if you aren't, you need to start. Just kind of give us a quick breakdown of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I got kind of lucky. I applied to Pro Football Focus, one of my favorite websites back when I was a senior in college, and I was an accounting major but didn't want to do accounting, so I was kind of undecided what I was going to do my spring semester, and I saw a job opening on Pro Football Focus. I applied after going through their rigorous interview process. I got hired. I was one of like 6 people that they hired, and then I mostly did data collection for the first year. But then after that was they trained me to do analysis, and I've been doing that ever since. And so that was back in 2012. Now that I got hired, so it's been doing that ever since. And now we've started doing college and all that, and I do most of our podcasting, videos, that sort of stuff now. So it's been fun.
And I went through 3 rounds of that same rigorous process, and I can tell you all that is some serious business there. That Pro Football Focus is absolutely nothing easy to get into, and you guys provide just excellent analysis and honestly just statistics that you can't find anywhere else. It's an excellent resource for all the football fans. But you know why you're here, Mike. We want to talk about the Packers draft. First of all, of course, everybody and their dog wants to put out a draft grade, and it's asinine. I mean, it's really asinine probably until, I don't know, the end of the 2018 season. So don't give me a letter grade, but just talk about like your general positive or negative reaction to what Thompson and his team did this weekend.
No, I will echo your sentiments. Letter grades are silly. It's more the more meaningful thing is to evaluate every pick within the context of how you had evaluated the player prior to the selection. That I think is the most important thing. And to me, they drafted a handful of guys that were kind of high risk, high reward. Which I mean, that's to some degree Ted Thompson. He values athleticism. We've seen that again and again. He doesn't draft a lot of poor athletes regularly. So in some way, he does make a lot of high risk, high reward type of picks. And so we'll see. At the top of the draft there, Kevin King. Not amazing production, but unbelievable athleticism traits. Same with Josh Jones, the safety that they drafted in the second round. And then Vince Beagle and Montravius Adams aren't too much different. Both those are fantastic athletes who they could develop into great players. But so right now, the grade is, like you said, incomplete, but a lot of guys who could be, all the way through Beagle, who could be high-level starters. And I think that's what the Packers value throughout the draft. They value guys who could end up, at the end of the day, be impact players when it's all said and done. They're not going to draft guys who will be role players for them, I think, is their overall strategy.
So let's talk about Thursday night a little bit. I was with my best friend. We went over
We were in Green Bay and dipped over to a local establishment just to see I wanted to see the fan reaction of the Packers pick. We got there around pick 27, and by the time pick 28 was being announced, there was a CLE where the GB used to be on the screen, and we knew that we were going to be picking first tomorrow and that we were going to get to see any reaction of any kind. So talk to us a little bit about the value of trading down and then what the Packers actually netted, which, of course, just black and white, is Kevin King and Vince Beagle as opposed to the ability to draft Reuben Foster, David Njoku, or, of course, what Wisconsin as an entire state wanted, and that was what was T.J. Watt.
Yeah, I was personally hoping that the Packers sort of laxed their character profile and went for Reuben Foster because I think he's that sort of game-changing linebacker that actually has value as a first-round pick, and not just a first-round pick. I thought he had value as a top 5 pick, but there's off-field with him that comes with it. Everyone knew that with the combine test, with him getting kicked out of the combine, and then we've heard just behind the scenes that he had some of the worst interviews with teams we've ever heard. So that's why he fell, and that's why the Packers, I would imagine, even if he fell to him in the 5th round, wouldn't have taken him. He was probably just off their board altogether. So that one, trading back there, didn't really bother me after the fact that they likely did not have a draftable grade on Foster. But the T.J. Watt, I always thought he was a little overrated. I get that. He's J.J. Watt's brother, and J.J. Watt turned into this all-world defensive player. But T.J. was nowhere near as productive at Wisconsin as his brother was. He just is a work in progress. And if his brother wasn't J.J. Watt, he would have gone at the end of the 2nd round or the top of the 3rd, or even where Vince Beagle ended up going at the very top of the 4th. So I'm not upset that they didn't take him. Kevin King, I'm a fan of. I think his game can translate eventually to the NFL. He played kind of a weird position at Washington where they moved him into the slot a lot of the times, which I don't think that at 6'3", 200 pounds, you should ever be really going to the slot. You're a boundary, you're an edge corner at that size. So I think he can be utilized better in the pros if you play him in a scheme where he's going to press more, where he's going to play exclusively on the edge, going to go against bigger receivers. I think that's something that the Packers have been missing in recent years. They used, Ladarius Gunter on bigger receivers last year, and we saw how that worked out in the NFC Championship game. I just don't think that he's the guy you want doing that anymore. So Kevin King immediately upgrades at that position, and I'm a fan of the pick. I think cornerback was easily and by far their biggest need. They just had to address that at the top of this one.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it on our show before. I think Ladarius Gunter's a great 4th corner. If he is the guy that comes in and plays on the outside against the second best outside receiver, 4.7's not great, but he's had some good games, had some bad games, shown some flashes that he can at least contribute. But asking him to cover Beckham and Julio and Dez one game after another in the playoffs, you're just asking him to get burnt, and they finally did. And as far as the Foster thing is concerned, I mean, I think you and I both understand Thompson's just apparently never going to address that inside linebacker position.
Well, I'm not sure he's never going to address that. I mean, I think he was still around when they drafted A.J. Hawk, right? Am I wrong about that? Or
the team, but
I just think it's more he's never going to lax his character issues.
Right.
If that he's going to need great value, one, and then he's never just going to, one, character issues, and two, he's never going to do injury issues. So if a guy has injury history after he got burned by Justin Harrell, he's just not going to address that again. He's not going to go that route again, I don't think.
Right, and Hawk, they were a 4-3 at that time, and they drafted Hawk to play Will. Hawk also had one of the greatest combines of all time, so bang, right back to what you touched on earlier, they love athletes. I mean, they always have. So talk maybe a little bit more specifically about Kevin King. That's your top guy. You're saying, and I agree. I mean, I've made the case that either Demarius Randall or Quentin Rollins is likely to have their Devontae Adams year, where sophomore year was real bad, but we're going to come in 3rd year, and at least, I mean, if they could even get back to where they were as rookies, it would be such a marked improvement from what they put on tape in 2016. Even with that said, a true boundary outside corner, a guy that could play, left cornerback in a cover 3 system, Pro Football Focus draft grade, gave Richard Sherman as their comp, and he's quite a bit faster than Richard. Talk to us a little bit about Kevin King.
Yeah, like I said, I'm a fan of the pick. I know he wasn't, lights out in college. He wasn't as productive as like a Marshawn Lattimore. He wasn't on those guys' sort of level in terms of lockdown, not allowing anything. He had some, he got lackadaisical at times. He has some plays where he bites on double moves, that sort of thing. But just from a movements, like from a pure traits perspective, there's not any cornerback that can match what he has in this draft class. He's just a freakishly athletic, long, all that sort of stuff. Just can he put it all together at the end of the day? I know one of my fellow analysts at Pro Football Focus, Sam Monson, said this guy will be Richard Sherman in 3 years. Like he said, he will put it together. He thinks he will, at the end of the day, be a lockdown, guy who can match up with any sort of larger receiver and just shut them down the entire game. I'm not going to get completely on board with that because that's, Richard Sherman's seems like a rarity, but Kevin King has those traits that he could definitely be that guy. So I'm on board with the Packers taking him at the top of the second. I think with how deep this cornerback class was, there wasn't a lot of guys that I would have taken over him once they drafted. I don't think there's anyone actually would have taken over him once they drafted. Probably the only guys that I would have taken over him were the three that did go before him in the first. That's just because they were more productive in college. And all three of those guys, I think Conley, Humphrey, and Lattimore, all had length, all had size. So it was a rare cornerback class. So they got lucky to get him at the top of the second. I think any other year King would have gone in the teens or 20s, and just because of the pure talent that was in this class.
I agree. I agree and disagree. I mean, I think you're exactly right. This was a generational cornerback class. It was absolutely unbelievable. I had a few guys, not a ton, that I just had at cornerback over King. I thought really the number one thing that bugged me is he let a lot of stuff go in front of him, which is a complete opposite problem that the Packers had last year. Everything was getting beat deep, but you can't throw over 6'3" and 4.43 speed. In breaking routes, slants, digs, even just hooks and curls. He was giving up a lot of that stuff on film, and it eventually kind of drove me nuts. But I agree with your long-term assessment, and I really hope Sam's long-term assessment is correct.
Yeah, I think the underneath stuff is the stuff that's probably easier to coach, and that's what I think the general NFL consensus is when we see guys who are ultra productive in college, but it's a lot of pass breakups on slants and, pass breakups underneath, but then they're giving up, 10 to 12 big plays over the course of a season. Those guys tend to not get drafted. The guys without the long speed who can't make up, a step on a deep ball. Those are the guys who go late, but the guys who maybe they give up some underneath stuff, but will just not get beaten deep or not be, absolutely torched down the field. Those guys tend to get drafted higher. So, we'll see if he can develop that underneath game, like you said.
And that's certainly exciting because Packers cornerbacks coach Joe Witt is one of the more respected defensive backs coach in the league. Despite what happened last year, I mean, Coach Witt just has that reputation. Yes. So it's exciting to give him a guy with King's tools. You're absolutely right. I mean, athletically, he's so far beyond anything that Witt's ever had to work with. Sam Shields was a little bit faster, but Sam's 5'11". It's a completely different thing.
Yeah, they legitimately couldn't play, man free. They couldn't play single high man last year because of how slow their cornerbacks were and how afraid they were of getting beaten deep. They played more two-man than any other team in the league because they wanted two safeties over the top when they were playing man coverage, just because Ladarius Gunter running a 4.7 isn't going to be able to stay with a guy running a 4.5. That's just, he's going to get beaten deep if you leave him on an island. So I think this immediately upgrades, it just allows them more flexibility in that regard.
The pick I think that's created the most kind of wringing of hands in Packer Nation is Montravius Adams. And the reason that I believe that is are you familiar with the spiderweb stuff on Mock Draftable?
Yes, so I know his change of direction drills were not great for a D-tackle.
And not only that, but the top two, it comes up with comparisons on the left side there. The top two comparisons to Montravius Adams were Kyrie Thornton and Justin Harrell. And that it sent the natives got restless fast. I mean, that was a rough deal, certainly. So I don't have an issue with it. I actually, for our Cheesehead TV draft guide, I had defensive interior and edge. I ranked Adams 10th. I liked his film just fine. I thought that this defensive line class was about as opposite of the cornerback class as you could get. I did not like this class, period. But you guys, at Pro Football Focus, and I'm not sure if that speaks for you specifically, but at PFF, you had him as defensive interior number 8, and he ranked inside your top 100 overall players. Calm us down. Tell Cheesehead Nation why this pick was not a disaster.
I was going to say, I don't mind the pick. I don't think it's where they got him at the end of the third. You're not the guys who are passing on. There's no sure thing at that point. So he has some upside in the fact that is 10 times great. His burst off the line of scrimmage is fantastic. He can be a consistent push the pocket kind of guy, running a 4.8 something at 300 plus pounds. So he can bull rush. That should translate to the NFL to some degree. But extremely inconsistent in college is the biggest thing. I watched the Alabama game, and he was just a dominant force in that game, which is probably the most encouraging tape you can put on for him, considering that Alabama offensive line, Bradley Bozeman, a handful of guys in that line who are NFL caliber players. He dominated them in that game. But then you put on other games, you put on, Texas A&M, Arizona State, and it's just like, where's the same guy? He's not there. So, and even just from year to year inconsistencies as well. He just didn't produce well as a junior, had a great grade for us as a sophomore, but not a great grade as a junior. So that inconsistency, you wonder, this 5-star guy who was supposed to be this big thing, does he have this talent in the bag that all of a sudden, hey, he realized I wasn't the first round pick that I thought I was going to be all through college. Is he going to get his head on straight and start getting after it and be more consistent? If he is, then it's a great pick. If he's not, then he's probably going to be the same inconsistent guy he was in college was not worth that pick. So at his highest level, he's definitely worth that pick, and it could be a steal. But like I said, another high risk, high reward, like I've been saying.
Pro Football Focus was on the other end with Vince Beagle. He ranked 20th at edge, still ranked inside the top 100 because of just how good this edge class was. But why shouldn't Packers fans be as excited as they are for the Wisconsin boy? That was when they opened up day 3 by picking Beagle. That was a fun time to be on Packers Twitter, and they're a pretty cynical bunch.
No, I get being excited. Wisconsin guy. He's going to work his ass off, considering he's been a Packers fan, I think, his entire life from what he tweeted out afterwards. And there's some to like there. He's a great athlete. The thing is, he just was so undersized at Wisconsin that when I watched him at the Senior Bowl, he just got engulfed by larger tackles. At any time anyone with some size got his hands on him, I just worry about him in run defense, holding up on the edge, sort of like Clay Matthews early in his career. I know Clay had some issues early on as a run defender that he's cleared up over the years, but it just, when you're under 250 pounds, it's hard to go up against 300-pound tackles and hold your own regularly. So he might be, early in his career, a designated pass rusher, and he just doesn't have a full move set at this point. I know he has a nice little spin move, and I know he has great athleticism. He's a fantastic athlete for his size, but still I classify him as raw at this point. So if he can develop his game, if he can develop his hands, I know doesn't have great length or height for the position, but if he can develop that a little bit more, I think he'd be productive. It's a lot of the same things I said for Kyler Fackrell a season ago. I think Fackrell had a little more length, but just both undersized guys who could need a little more refinement for technique to be productive at the next level.
Do you feel like Beagle could potentially be like what Hassan Reddick is going to be in Arizona, or even how the Patriots use Dante Hightower, and just that maybe on early downs he plays off the ball in a 3-4 and then drops down to rush from the edge on passing downs, or do you think they're probably just going to use him on the edge?
No, I think that's probably my biggest plus with the pick, and why I would be happy with this pick. Why I'm not down on the pick at all, even though that's probably a little above where we had him, is because I think in a 3-4 or someone that gets creative with their defensive fronts, he can be a weapon in that. I like his skills in coverage. He's not a liability in coverage by any means. I think he could play an off-ball role, take on blocks, and I think he can do those sort of things that you need to be an inside linebacker in a 3-4. So he has that versatility. I know the Packers have moved many guys from outside linebacker to inside linebacker in the past. So if they do feel like that's a position of need at inside, that he could definitely do both. Yeah,
I think it'd be very interesting. Green Bay's gotten a lot more diverse and creative defensively just in the last 2 seasons, using Burnett at inside linebacker, all the different ways that they used Micah Hyde. I think potentially you could see Matthews, Fackrell, and Beagle all used both on the edge and off the ball, and really could give a lot of hybrid looks and be a little bit more diverse in what they do defensively. So I think Beagle was an exciting pick, and I appreciate your insight on that a lot. Let's talk a little bit about the late rounds. Green Bay selected 4 guys on defense right away, and then they took the next 6 guys all on the offensive side of the ball. Talk to me about your favorite value of the offensive players that Green Bay selected.
I think Jamal Williams, I'm not sure value-wise. Obviously, the later round running backs could get more value in terms of where they're selected, but I just think Jamal Williams is probably the best of the bunch. I think he has the ability to – I wouldn't put him as the starter over Ty Montgomery. I still love Ty Montgomery as a running back. I think he gets slept on to some degree. I would hate it if they moved him back to wide receiver because I think he's that talented as a running back. But Jamal Williams can do a lot he's a competent pass protector. He runs extremely hard between the tackles. He will, always get the most out of any run in front of him. I'm not sure he's a big play threat in the NFL, but I don't think you need him to be you need him to be a get you into a 2nd and 6 situation type of running back with what the Packers have offensively. So I think I'm probably highest on him in terms of where they got him. That's 4th round was right where I had Jamal Williams. I think he can be a solid starter or, a solid number 2 in the NFL.
A few things. First, I think you and I are pretty big property owners on Ty Montgomery Island. It bothers me to no end when, they talk about him not being physical. I mean, the guy's 6 foot, 220 pounds. What else do you want?
I'm 100% on board.
And anyway, it's interesting you talk about Jamal Williams too, because I would say just from an athleticism standpoint, he's the only non-elite athlete that they took that's like just good at football instead of being this freak in gym shorts. So it's interesting that was your favorite value there, and a lot of concerns with his athleticism and his ability to create for himself. But man, you turn on the tape, he never comes down on first contact, and arm tackles are just a joke. It's just not. It's not going to go down like that, and so. I think I'm there with you on Williams. I'm intrigued by the offensive line prospect from South Florida, just because they've been so successful with those 6'4" left tackles, moving them inside. I mean, Treader, Sitton, Lang, the list goes on, and I think he might have a chance to be that guy.
I truthfully don't know much about him. From what I saw, he's a little bit stiff. I'm not sure he's quite as nimble as the other guys that they've drafted, but I can't argue with the Packers' track record. So I'm not going to write it off as a bad pick, especially in the 6th round. You're doing all you can to find anyone who could even contribute to a team. So
100%, and I think that's the difference between taking Kofi in the 6th and sitting Lang Treader in the 4th. You're not going to get that level of athlete, but I understand. One last thing here, and we're going to close pretty easy. Your favorite pick of the weekend for Green Bay and your least favorite?
Favorite pick, I'm going to say Kevin King. I still think going cornerback there, it was definitely just a need. You had to address it and had to address it early. And then he's the type of guy who could be, a shutdown number 1 corner, which they just haven't had in Charles Woodson, I would say. I don't think they've ever had a true number 1 since Woodson left. So I think that's my favorite pick of the weekend. My least favorite's got to be Josh Jones. I don't quite – if he's going to play just safety, obviously he's not going to play right away. If he's going to be a sort of box linebacker hybrid, I just think there are better options on the board. From everything I've watched on him, when he has to play anything other than the box, it was a nightmare for him. I just didn't show good instincts, didn't take good angles. So if they actually keeping him at safety, I'm worried about that pick. And I thought they could have gone a lot of better options at safety, especially in the 2nd round when it's not really a need position.
Yeah, it's interesting. McCarthy spoke specifically about it, saying that he felt like King would take over the Shields role and Jones would take over the Hyde role. you can't get much different than Josh Jones and Micah Hyde. Micah Hyde was a below-average athlete with unbelievable instincts and smarts, and Josh Jones is an athletic freakazoid that struggles.
Yes, I mean that's what made Hyde what he was in that role, and I think playing the slot just you need instincts. You're changing, you're passing off so many routes. You're in zone a lot of the time and underneath, and that just it doesn't take athleticism. It takes needing to see what's coming your way, and I just did not ever see that from Jones. So I'd love to be pleasantly surprised, but I'm just low on the pick at this point.
Yeah, my hope really for what they could do there is playing House and King and Clinton Dix in a cover 3 in a single high situation and being able to get away with it. Then you can use hitters like Jones and Kentrell Bryce where they have less of a responsibility but to just be a thumper in that Cam Chancellor role. But, I mean, that is so best-case scenario. In any event, Mike, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. We appreciate your time, and I just want to thank you for stopping by.
Not a problem, Ross. Thank you for having me, and hope you have a good one.
Once again, we would like to thank Mike, thank Pro Football Focus for lending us Mike, and he is welcome back on the show anytime. There's no question about that. Speaking of welcome back on the show anytime, Voch, we have to give you a minute here to expound about the decisions that your Cowboys made the past weekend, but try to keep it to 60 seconds.
It's funny when you first watch film on somebody. Like when I first watched film on Taco Charlton, I was like, you know what, cool. I think I'm good with a 3-game evaluation of Taco Charlton. But when you draft him, I want to watch every single play this dude been a part of. I need to figure this dude out. So I've basically been doing that with Taco Charlton. I've talked myself into the pick. Chidobe Awuzie, I think he's going to come in and do some things, play all over the defense. Jordan Lewis, he's going to be the nickel guy because he's 5'10", but I think he's one of the better cover corners. Ryan Switzer, rotational slot receiver type of guy, gadget play type of guy. Special teams is really why we got him. The steal was Xavier Woods though. Man, I love Xavier Woods, the safety from Louisiana Tech. Got him in the 6th round, and I won't bore y'all with the rest of it. But I'm pretty happy with the players that we got and the value that we in which we found them. It's something I just thought of. Whenever you get players and they don't have to start, your team wasn't as bad as you thought they were, and we got a lot of guys that's going to come in and give us some depth. So I'm happy about that.
All right, yeah, and that was Cowboys Minute with Voch.
Get it out of here, Packers news. Let's do it.
All right. So because, as Cody mentioned in the pre-production meeting, Mike and I went pretty extensive into everything. We're just going to do real brief thoughts of each pick here. Kevin King, as far as I'm concerned, was the pick they had to make because there is nobody in the cornerback class with the ceiling as high as Kevin King. Just the way that he tests. I mean, he's in the 98th percentile as far as athletes at the cornerback position. Athletically, he's Richard Sherman, but he's just a lot faster. And maybe, no, he's not a number 1 shutdown corner today, but in 3 years, if he is everything that he can be, it's going to be that number 1 corner that you can build a defense around for Rodgers' kind of twilight years. Cody, your thoughts?
I mean, after the trade back, and then you see Watt get plucked, and Foster get plucked, and Njoku get plucked, it is almost guaranteed that it's going to be King, the smoke screen of Kaiser, and the flirting with Dalvin Cook. Those are all just, I think, just put out there for feelers and trades. I think King had to be the pick, and he offers something that we don't really have on the roster right now with being 6'3" and 4'4'3". It's just a great piece to work with, and technique can get cleaned up absolutely, but he makes flashes out on the football field that make you think he can be really good. It was a pick that needed to be done, and Thompson pulled the trigger and I think made the right decision.
Jacob, your thoughts on the King selection?
Question, please. Wait.
Go
ahead. Real fast. Okay, did the passing of Watt make y'all cry a little bit? Because I know when I was on the first time, y'all were really pro Watt, and I was really maybe 2nd, 3rd round guy Watt, but y'all wanted Watt in the 1st round. I think you and the other Green Bay fans did. When y'all traded back and you lost him to Pittsburgh, did y'all shed one man tear because y'all couldn't get him?
I don't think it was a cry. I mean, I think at the fandom in us in the Wisconsinites, I think it was a little bit crushed, but any reasonable Packer fan or draft nick or whatever will tell you that, picking up that extra fourth was probably a wise decision. And the in Ted we trust kind of mantra, it's got to hold true. So you have to trust that he did his work on both King and Watt and thought he took the better of the two players or was able to get them on the same tier essentially, but pick up an extra pick.
And, I'm a North Dakota State guy and Jacob's a Michigan guy, so we're not from Wisconsin and didn't have that same emotional attachment to Watt. So, none for me, Jacob. Jake, how about you? Your thoughts on the Watt thing and then your Kevin King impressions?
Yeah, the Watt thing, it was what it was. I liked the player. But once they traded back, it's kind of I trust Ted Thompson's evaluation, and it's clear. Even reading what you read now is TJ Watt wasn't a consideration for the Packers at 29th overall. They felt they could get, apparently it came down to Dalvin Cook or Kevin King, and they felt they could get either one of those guys at 33 overall, or if one of those guys got scooped up, they felt comfortable picking either one of them at 33 if one of them was gone. So if they're not comfortable or if they were okay with Watt being gone, they liked Watt enough as a second-round pick, but they didn't like him as a first-round pick. So I was fine with that. But yeah, like you said, I'm not a Badgers fan. I don't even really like them that much football side of things because my favorite team in college football plays against them pretty often, actually, and might even play for a Big Ten title someday soon here. So, and Voch, your team got a lot of my favorite team's guys, so I'll be paying close attention to the Cowboys, I guess, see how Taco and Jordan and those guys do out there. So let Jordan Lewis play man-to-man. There's my advice for that. But to get back to Kevin King, once they got to that point, it was the only pick I thought they could make. There wasn't an edge rusher worth the 33rd overall pick, in my opinion. And Kevin King was, like you said, Ross, Richard Sherman and a lot faster. And, one of the words we were talking about that Mike McCarthy said very often was competition. And they didn't rest on the laurels of Randall and Rollins being top 60 picks, and I like that. Add some competition. Make those guys nervous. Make those guys compete for their jobs, and let the best guy get on the field. And, Ross, you mentioned your plan was sign a veteran and draft a guy in the top 60 picks. Well, they did both of those things, and they happened to get a guy who runs a 4.4 40 and is 6'3" tall. And he gets to work with a guy named Joe Witt, who's a pretty good cornerbacks coach, who's worked with, no offense to guys like Tremont Williams, but undrafted free agents. Kevin King is another high-round pick that he can work with. That's a lot of talent in that Washington secondary. And they added it. And like I said, I think that's the only pick they can make. Really like Dalvin Cook as a player. And I know we kind of talked about it back and forth, but thinking about it more, there's just not a lot of value in taking a running back over a guy that could eventually be, if Kevin King hits a ceiling, he's a number one corner. If Dalvin Cook hits his ceiling and plays in the Packers offense, he gets 15 carries a game. There's much more value in Kevin King in that scenario. So there's my feeling in a nutshell there. But they had a competition in the quarterback room. I can't complain with that at all.
And athletically, I think that, Cook has some questions that King absolutely doesn't have. Cook is about a 6th or 7th percentile athlete, and as I mentioned, Kevin King, just on testing numbers, is in the 98th. So it's just a cleaner selection. Certainly. Voch, what did you see on film from Kevin King?
Well, when I think about Kevin King, he's the nicest ball of clay in this group of corners this year. We talked about there being 15 to 18 or so corners that can come in and really play. Like, this is one of the better cornerback groups that we've seen. And one of the trends in the league is we want corners that's 6 foot, that can run, that can cover. Kevin King, 6'3", can run, and can cover. 200 pounds, long, right? Man cover, like animal. So it makes you excited. I don't think he's as polished as he can be, though. I've been hearing a lot of people say the Richard Sherman word. I can't see into the future. I don't play somebody that does that on TV neither. But I do think that if you teach him a few nuances of the game, that's really what he's missing. Think about Green Bay, like y'all's cornerback problem. It wasn't like a line of scrimmage to 20 yards problem. It was more so of a we're getting beat deep problem. right? And if Kevin King is 6'3" and he runs a 4.4 and he has long arms, it's kind of hard to beat that dude deep. Plus whatever, help you have. He's the perfect cover one guy, one high, corner, right? Just put him down there and let him chase people. Right, like he can run with the little guys and he can play big with the big guys, right? Just Kevin King's, if I had to point out an issue, he'll let some slants go in front of him. Those just the curls, he'll kind of let that happen. He'll let screens develop in front of him. But that's small stuff that you can kind of work on. When to break on routes, when to be physical. I mean, he can tackle. He's a willing tackler that can tackle. So it's not the athleticism. You can't teach somebody how to be 6'3" and athletic, but you can teach Kevin King how to see things in front of him better. So I like the pick. I'm fine with it if I'm a Green Bay fan. I'm not sure if it's gonna. He's not gonna be everything you want him to be day one. September, he's not gonna be the dude that we want him to be. September next year, he's gonna be a much better product, than he is. Get him 365 days to just learn stuff. He'll be all right.
Yeah, and that's kind of exactly one of the things you pointed out. You can't really throw over 6'3" and 4.43. One of the things that Mike Renner and I talked about, and you guys just heard that interview, of course, is that the Packers played more two-man than any team in football because they knew they did not have the speed at corner to not have safety help on both halves of the field. So that's an excellent point you bring up, Voch. Let's talk about Josh Jones. For me, I have limited access to film, and really the only 3 games that I went through were the 3 games that are on Draft Breakdown. Everything I saw was everything a scouting report says. Absolute freakazoid athlete in the 90th percentile plus probably for athletes at safety, but over-aggressive, doesn't take tremendous angles. If they want him to be Micah Hyde, he's going to have to make up for his football intellect deficiency compared to Hyde with just how much better of an athlete he is, and that is quite a bit. I mean, he can get away with a lot. Cody, what were your thoughts on the Jones signing, or drafting, excuse me?
Well, I admittedly didn't dive too much into him. I have now, of course, watched all 3 games on Draft Breakdown. I didn't see it when it was Demarius Randall a couple years ago. I didn't see it this year. I just never studied all these safeties. Going back and listening to McCarthy speak, you can see the versatility that he played with at NC State. I mean, he was able to get into the slot, into the box, play deep. There was a lot on his plate there, and, there were some instinct issues. I think he needs to do a better job identifying things around him. And when you're tasked with that much, of course, there's going to be a longer learning curve. And, ultimately, if he plays that Hyde role or even Charles Woodson role, he's that type of athlete, I think it'll be a while until he kind of really, hones his skill. Almost like Clinton Dix, where he came in, he wasn't near the athlete Jones is, but he even took a season or 2 to really kind of figure things out. So again, much like with King, I don't think the expectations for year 1 should be through the roof. But over time, you get a really special athlete, with a defensive mind like Capers who can put people in good positions. Once he really learns the defense and what he needs to do, I think he could be a really good football player.
Yeah, and that was one thing, too, is just I really liked when they would just line him up 9 yards off the tight end and let him play man-to-man coverage. You did see them doing a lot of separate things. And I mentioned before the draft, maybe pay attention. Or when we did the safeties show, I just said, hey, they might be moving Burnett to linebacker. So eyes open. If they draft a safety, don't freak out. And that's kind of what they did. Jacob, did you get any more chance to watch Josh Jones than we did?
Not pre-draft, but like you mentioned, before the draft, I had the 4 or 5 guys that we talked about on the safety show, and then little after that, a couple sleepers here. There, Tedrick Thompson, who I mentioned. But after the draft, I've watched those games that you guys have mentioned on Draft Breakdown, and what sticks out to me from the selection is it's very clear what the Packers' priority was in the secondary, and that is speed. You guys were talking about earlier how you can't throw over long arms in 4-4-3 with Kevin King. And I think they still have visions of Julio Jones and Taylor Gabriel and all these receivers running past them. Ross, you're talking about they're playing two-man because they don't have the speed at corner because these receivers are running behind them. Well, they didn't have a ton of speed at safety either, or in the other parts of their sub-parts of their secondary because of guys like Micah Hyde playing in it. You kind of saw Micah Hyde not getting an offer. That was a very clear message of, despite some of the things, Swiss Army knife type things he does, he's just simply too slow to play the kind of coverage they want to play. Josh Jones is brought in because they want to get faster, and I think it also speaks to maybe focusing less so on the letter or letters next to the player's name, and more so what kind of player they are, and trying to get more athletes on the field more so than position groups. I think you're going to see a lot of what they'll call big nickel. Clinton Dix, Josh Jones, Morgan Burnett. Those guys will all be on the field at the same time. Morgan Burnett will play hybrid linebacker. You'll have guys like that. You'll play a lot of that stuff. You could probably see Burnett play a little bit of slot. You could see Josh Jones play a little bit of slot. But they want speed and athleticism on the field for these spread offenses because you can see, Voch is here. He can vouch for it. The Cowboys can play two tights, extra offensive linemen, and pound it with Zeke Elliott. And then with some of the additions they've made, they can spread you out too. You've got to be able to play both games. And I think the Packers are trying to trend toward being able to do both of those things. But they had to add speed to their secondary. And I think that was the big message they sent with King and Jones was, we watched us get blown off the field by the Atlanta Falcons in the championship game because these guys were just running by us. And we can't play that way. We can't be slower than the guys that were playing on the field. There's only so much you can make up for in speed deficiency. So that is what I saw as soon as I heard Josh Jones' selection, I'm thinking, okay, it's speed and explosion. That's what they were talking about when they're talking about more explosive players. And there it was in the first two rounds right there.
Yeah, this is without question the most athletic class Thompson's ever drafted. Everyone except for Jamal Williams, excuse me. I wish it was Jamal Adams. Jamal Williams, above average athlete or elite athlete. Voch, did you have a chance to watch any Josh Jones?
I love Josh Jones. I actually call him Josh Caveat Jones because there's always, some extra that you got to bring in with him. Yes, he played nickel corner, but I don't think he sees that well in these condensed areas or whatnot, right? So then you see him play a little bit of free safety, and you like his athleticism, you like his speed, but he doesn't really have the angles to really drive that range home like you want him to, right? So you look at him as the big boy safety, strong safety, right? Because he's a missile, right? Like that dude is physical. 6'1", 220, another big physical long guy that lacks a little bit of polish, right? He's not as polished at strong than he is at free. He played a bunch of free, but I don't think he'll be playing free, now. I don't think he'll be playing nickel corner now, you know what I'm saying? His job is to chase and tackle people and to cover tight ends, basically. I think that's what y'all gonna end up doing with him though. But he's gonna bring physicality. He's going to bring athleticism. He's going to bring size, okay? Got to have size. He's 6'1", right? You got to have a safety that's 6'1", 220, got a nice little build on him, right? But he doesn't take the best angles. But just like with Kevin King, these are things that you can teach Josh Jones. Like, grab him, bring him, hey, Josh, come here, man. When you do this, when you do that, then you smack him upside the head real hard. You say, do that better, and he'll go do it better. I think he's coachable because, I watched some of his older film, and he was making worse mistakes, but now he's making lighter mistakes. So I think by the time he'll get to the practice squad, or not practice squad, but to practice or minicamp, things like that, he'll be making even less mistakes. But he's another ball of clay that you can work with, and if you get him to where you want him to be, he'll be everything you had. I had more. But, y'all pretty much said everything I was going to say anyway. But I like Josh Jones. I think, personally, though, you probably could have got him in the third, though. You probably could have got him in the third. But if y'all liked him, and if that's y'all do, go get him.
Yeah, that's a Thompson thing, too. I've never really got the feeling that he has that great of a grasp on where other teams evaluate players. If he's got a player at this spot, he's just going to take him. He doesn't really care. If he's trading down, it's because he has enough guys where he wants them on his board that if he trades down, he can pretty much guarantee himself he still gets one of those guys. I totally get where you're coming from. I think ultimately what they can do as well with Josh Jones is protect him. Because if Devon House and Kevin King are good, we know how Clinton Dix is good. You can play cover 3, you can play cover 1, and you can just tell Josh Jones, you know what, you're Cam Chancellor. Punish people and go man-to-man on tight ends. That's your job. These 3 have the shell coverage. You're going to be fine. The next pick, I think, you heard it in my conversation with Mike, was the most controversial pick just for player and where he went. And that was Montravius Adams. Voch, since last time we said everything that you were going to say, why don't you go first? Tell us about Montravius.
Oh, man, I'm about to ruin it for y'all because I'm about to say everything, dog. Montravius, I love Montravius Adams, man. He's one of my favorite players in this draft. The problem is he's so inconsistent, right? Like, 1 minute you're watching Montravius, and he's looking like, man, this dude is just whooping everybody. If you watch him versus LSU, he's whooping Ethan Postage, right? Like, he's destroying this dude, right? Anybody that you put in front of him, he's the 6'4", 300-pound trash can full of dirt that you're looking for, right? And then you're thinking, okay, well, he's not that athletic. He's a nose guard. He's 300 pounds, and he'll show you a little athleticism, right? I can cuss, right?
Absolutely.
Ass whoop, right? Ass whoop. That's what he brings to the table, and I love him. But you watch a game like Texas A&M, and he just disappears all day, right? Like, that's the same dude that that was just whooping all these people that are just putting hands on Alabama, right? We know Alabama for Alabama, and that's the same Montravius Adams. Why are you whooping them, but you can't whoop Texas A&M, or it was some other game I was watching, man. But he will disappear. He will look like, remember in Family Guy when they were just following fat people with the tuba. Montravius Adams will give you a moment, and you will look at. I did it on my film session, right? Look me up on Voch Lombardi YouTube. Montravius Adams. I will hit you with a tuba moment. But 3 plays later, Montravius is flying to the football, right? So, man, my first thought is try to get him in a little better shape, right? Montravius could just be getting tired out there, okay? Try to shade him at that one guy, that one gap a little bit, right? But this zero get triple teamed all day dude might get tired, man. Get a little bit of rotation going. Christian Ringo, get him involved in that. Give him a blow, please, because you don't want the damn Family Guy tuba music playing. But I love Montravius. I love his upside. I love what he can be. I saw some thing online that was talking about his change of direction. Damn it, he the zero. He lined up in front of the quarterback. How much change do you need from him, right? Just go forward and you'll be just fine, right? But I love Montravius. And getting him at 93, a lot of people thought he was going to be a first round talent, at least a late first, early second round talent. To get him at 93, that's some damn good value. But you need to coach him up to get him as good as he needs to be.
Yeah,
ass whoop.
And I think too. You talk about give him a blow. Him and Kenny Clark in a rotation playing the 0 and the 1. I'm in. Mm-hmm. I'm good for that. If there's 70 defensive snaps and you're giving Kenny 40 and you're giving. Not that they would all, be on one or the other be on the field at all times, because Green Bay will basically have 4 pass rushers on 3rd and long and just leave the defensive tackles at home. But if you're on a 40-30 type of split on a 70-snap basis, I'm here for that. Cody, Jacob, anything to add on Montravius Adams?
I just love that in the first round we pick a guy. Well, okay, our first pick is a guy named Kevin King. Our second pick is a guy named Josh Jones. And then we have a little more modern, and we go with a guy named Montravius. I just found that to be pretty funny. But otherwise, it was a little confusing, and you get, player comps don't mean squat to me. But when you read, the first thing you read for player comps on Mock Draftable are Kyrie Thornton and, Justin Harrell. That's a little terrifying. But, Ross, I watched that tape that you put up against Alabama. Some of the stuff Voch was talking about with some of those other games against LSU. There is upside there. And like you mentioned, this isn't a guy that, you're going to rely on to give you 80% of your snaps because Kenny Clark and Dean Lowry exist, and obviously Mike Daniels is there, and Mike Daniels is, Voch, to use your term, king of the Packers ass whoop. I mean, that's the Packers guy, so you know he's going to give you 80% of the snaps. Kenny Clark and Dean Lowry are going to give you some. Ricky Jean-Francois is going to play against run teams. Montrevious is there to basically learn and give you a little bit of juice. So there's going to be plenty of breaks in there for him. And from my side of things, I've talked about this before. He pushes LaTroy Guion out the door, I think, in my opinion. So that's a good thing. That's what I have to add. I love his name. I think it's fantastic. And the upside is there. I think that we spent a little too much time worrying about his player comps. But, I mean, you knew Ted Thompson was picking a defensive lineman because that's what he does. So if he's a first, second-round talent, he had a really good day. He gave birth to a son and then got drafted like 10 minutes after he was born or something like that. So that's a great story. Makes me want to root for him. So I'm hoping.
Yeah,
it makes me. I root for him so much that I'm going to name my second born when I have him Montrevious, I think.
You better not.
All right.
You better.
Montrevious Bauer.
I mean, you can, but, you probably shouldn't. But go ahead. It's your world, buddy.
There's not too much more to add, except, let's just hope he doesn't go the way of Neil and Dayton, and in 3 years we figure out he's not as what he wanted to be on the inside, and we slim him down and throw him at outside linebacker.
At 310 pounds, I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Yeah, I don't.
Never know, my friend. You never know. That's more just kidding. I like the pick. He's super talented, former 5-star guy, great athlete, good 10-yard split. When he plays with his good pad leverage and he attacks the football, he's an absolute disruptor. Thompson's draft, looking back at his history at defensive lineman, he's really hit and miss. As you could probably say that for any position, but more notably on the D-line. So let's hope this is a hit. I think he has a chance to be a really good rotational player.
And now, Voch, this is the selection that actually made up for most of the T.J. Watt-related problems because the Packers kick off day 3 by selecting Vince Beagle. Our guy, Justice Mosqueda from Bleacher Report, he was the last kind of edge that he was excited about. Basically said, as far as he was concerned, Vince Beagle is the Packers' first-round pick. Thinks he had Beagle over Watt. I think that there's some talent there. I really think that he's the comparison to Clay Matthews is so unreal. Just when a guy that comes from a football family is a sneaky elite athlete, 6'3", 250. That the comparisons are there, and the knock was production. I mean, Matthews had 4.5 sacks at USC his senior year. Beagle had 4 sacks. But when we watch the film, it's really something special. And Jacob, I really appreciate you saying that player comps don't matter. 3 days after I published the player comps article on Cheesehead TV, that's real nice of you. But
sorry,
Voch, why don't you go ahead and kick off your thoughts on Vince Beagle, because we've kind of it's been done to death from the Packers' perspective because he is a Wisconsin guy.
If Vince Beagle's last name was Watt, he'd be a first-round pick, and if Vince and TJ traded jerseys, you probably wouldn't see much difference in them. Controversy. I do think TJ is a little more athletic than Vince, but he's not like terribly more athletic. Like Vince is an athlete. Like Vince can move, but like your other two or three players, he's another ball of clay. He's a bit raw. He's somebody that's going to need a tad bit of work. But what I see from Wisconsin is when you watch both of the outside linebackers, they're almost mirror-like. They both look the same. That's just great coaching from Wisconsin, right? So I'm assuming that Vince Beagle is receptive to coaching. Now, I don't think he's going to be able to play, much this year. He's kind of small. When he runs into guys bigger than him, he kind of has a problem. And, when you get to the National Football League, everybody's going to be bigger than the guys you used to go up against. So I think 1 year of nutrition and weight room and running and getting cussed out, I think Vince could turn into a serviceable starter, a pretty cool little rotational guy. But I love his effort. And I don't want to, use the pardon me, but the white guy cliche stuff, that he's a motor guy, that he's a hard worker, that type of stuff. But he's a motor guy. He's a hard worker. He doesn't stop. He's relentless. It's just he's not the best athlete in the world.
When he goes to work, does he bring his lunch pail?
He brings his lunch pail to work every day, man.
He wears that blue collar.
He pulls those bootstraps up and get to work, man. But something that you could be a little optimistic about is that you can see, like watching the film, you can see that he sees the play before he attempts to get there. One or two things happen. He either gets blocked by somebody bigger than him, or he's not athletic enough to get there. But he can definitely diagnose, and he can get after the pass. I'm sure on some passing down, if you're in a pinch and you had to plug somebody in to go rush the passer, Vince could effort his way into some plays. I like Vince. I like him a lot. If his last name was Watt, he'll be a first round pick.
And that was the thing that Mike from PFF said too. When he was down at the Senior Bowl, if he was dealing with a 6'7", 320-pound tackle, it was going to be a problem. And that's understandable. I mean, it is. But his speed of power transition is great. And I just want him to develop more moves than spin and spin counter. If we could diversify the pass rush moves just a little bit, that'd be great. Cody, your thoughts on Beagle?
Not a whole lot to add. I loved watching him. I was obviously a big fan of his. He was the team captain, rocked the mullet. He was, one of the alphas on the D. And Bosch made a great point. If you took away their numbers, those two guys look really similar. Watt's a little bit bigger. You can tell, with his first step, gains a little bit more ground, can get on the OT a little bit faster than Vince. But Vince was every bit as rugged, hard-nosed, player as Watt was. He was relentless and gets after the guys down the field. I love him. I think he'll work great in rotation. I do worry a little bit that some of his weaknesses, again, kind of like Watt's are similar to Fackrell. And the thing with Fackrell, he was an older rookie coming in, I think 25, and Beagle's actually 24. So, as far as upside goes, as far as strength and body, there's work that can be done yet, but, these aren't 21-year-old juniors that you got here either. These are, a little bit older guys. So I think between him and Fackrell, the two of them will combine to, help contribute on the D and the rotation.
Quickly though, just real fast, shouts out to draftbreakdown.com, because if they didn't give us those circles and arrows and GPS beacons, it'll be tough to watch Wisconsin film, dude. Like it'll be terrible. It'll be rough, man. Like it'll be like I said, TJ and Vince, they look alike, and they both wear numbers in the 40s. And the coaching at Wisconsin is so good. Like they both look like they're doing the same thing. If we didn't have those GPS beacons, we'll have some problems.
Well, and because they run a 3-4 and a 2-4-5, you don't know where those linebackers are. It's not just Vince and TJ; they're all white wearing numbers in the 40s. You're absolutely right. It's a chore. There's no question about that. And we're going to move on here to the next guy. And I'm not going to say anything because I'm going to admit fully that this is Cody's guy. Cody, talk to me about Jamal Williams.
I don't know. It's just, I'm sure you guys have had these moments when you're watching film. When you watch somebody, he just immediately jumps out at you, whether it's his style, his swag, whatever it is, on the field. It's just like it just hits you. Of like, man, that guy's good, right? Well, that happened with me with Jamal Williams. Probably in October or whatever. I see this guy who's high kneeing, running tough through a hole, looking big, kind of running like AP-esque style, and that's not a comp. It's just a kind of stylistic. Even James Starks, a taller running back, runs upright. You just kind of seem like you fit the system. Ben Fennell, of course, one of the great Packer followers out there, putting out clips and some of his stats and how he ran against the outside stretch zone and looking for the cutback. That's like his gimme. That's what the Packers run a lot. I think you're going to see him contribute early with Ty Montgomery. His ball security is going to be admired by McCarthy. I think you can teach him in pass protection at over 6 foot, 212 pounds. He's certainly capable and has the physique to hold up there. You're not a great athlete, but damn, I mean, Eddie wasn't. He was, churned out tough yards for us, made some first downs. Montgomery, not a great athlete either, a very good athlete, but there's a great mix of running backs on the roster, and Jamal Williams is really a solid pick. And, one of my favorites from early on, my draft crushes from early on. I'm happy he's a Packer and I get to watch his career.
Jacob, anything to add on Jamal?
Yeah, he's a guy that I'd been on for quite a while as well. I just wasn't as vocal as Cody. One of the first things that popped into my head, again, not really a player comp, I guess, if you will, but some guy that I thought of, and if he turns out to be this guy, I mean, I'm sure that every single Packers fan would be thrilled on it. And he was a mid-round pick, too. It was Jordan Howard. Similar vision, tough yards, doesn't go down on first contact. And that's something I think the Packers definitely value because the reality is they're just not a very good run-blocking offensive unit. And I think that's been proven over some period of time. And that's probably going to be even more true this year now, replacing T.J. Lang with Jari Evans. But Jamal Williams, I think, you bring up the ridiculousness of his quote-unquote character concern. I guess having sex in college is a character concern, but otherwise he's a clean prospect. He does a little bit of everything well, and my favorite thing about him, he runs through arm tackles, he runs hard, and I just don't see a whole lot of flaw in what he does well. And the part I like the most about him is he's a guy you got in the fourth round. You didn't have to use, the Jacksonville Jaguars used the fourth overall pick on a running back. Voch, no offense, I know your team did the same thing last year. And who's the other team? Carolina Panthers used the eighth overall pick on the running back. And the Packers could get maybe not the same, but relatively similar production, I think, from this guy if they gave him a similar amount of snaps. I can't complain with that at all, and they picked him in the fourth round. So they were able to secure three potential contributors to their defense, or four potential contributors to their defense before selecting a quote-unquote lead runner.
All right, Voch, talk to us about Jamal Williams. Feel free to use the term ass whoop.
Choosing Jamal Williams at 134 was the best pick the Green Bay Packers made that weekend. First of all, there's nothing wrong with having sex in college. Salute to that man, free Jamal Williams. Quickness in between the tackles. Finisher. Relentless. Ass whoop. When you put into perspective who he's going to be playing with, he's going to be playing with Rodgers, And, Williams is not a home run hitter. That's not his game. He can break off big runs, but he's a 3 and 4 yards at a time guy. You put Aaron Rodgers in 3rd and 2, 2nd and 6, it's just complimentary, It just works well together. It's a marriage. Kid's 6'2", 212, and I think if y'all fantasy football players, go get Jamal Williams right now. I love Ty Montgomery. I think at some point Ty is going to be the spell guy. He's going to go back to receiver at some point. I think Jamal Williams is going to be your guy. And being able to get him at 134, that's the best pick the Green Bay Packers made all weekend. That dude is ready to play today. Kevin King is a ball of clay. Josh Jones is technically a ball of clay. Beagle is a ball of clay. Jamal ready right now. And y'all can feel the passion that I'm giving y'all. I'm not a Green Bay Packers fan. But I'm a Cowboys fan that play y'all asses 3 times in the past 3 years. And this year again. I'm upset about y'all picking Jamal Williams. Y'all should be happy about having Jamal Williams on your football team.
It's wild, man. That when you do get a chance to listen to me and Mike talk, that was exactly what he said. He goes, he's going to put you in a lot of 2nd and 6s, and it's interesting that you say that because that's exactly what I think he brings to the table as well, and it's definitely exciting. I'm going to talk briefly about D'Angelo Lancey, and then I'm going to admit Aaron Jones, Kofi Amichia, Devontae Mays. I haven't watched enough film to give an opinion, so I'm just going to kind of let you guys expound on that. But what I wanted to say about D'Angelo Yancey was This guy is like just a slightly faster, slightly stronger version of James Jones. And if you put a hoodie on this guy, it would just be James Jones. It's absolutely wild to me how the way that they catch the ball is similar. The way that they run routes is very similar. And honestly, Jones's early issues with hands or, just catching the football, it looks like Yancey might have to overcome those as well. I just, from physical profile standpoint and from a fluidity of movement and how he actually possesses and maintains control of the football, the way he catches it, I thought I was looking in the mirror. Voch, you had something to say right away there?
Man, I was just saying, thinking about D'Angelo Yancey from Purdue. I like how he gets open. Like he's not a super blazy speed guy, right? But he can use a little bit of speed, route running, physicality. He puts those three things together to get separation really well, right? When you watch the limited amount of film you have on him, I've seen a couple of games. You see him polished with his release. He's using his hands to get a little bit of separation. Not really a push off, but he's using his hands to get your hands off of him. He can body up the DB to get himself in good posturing position to go up and make a catch. Good strong hands. He kind of needs to work on regular catches, but he can make those I'm snatching this football out of the air catches. I love that. Right, he's going to be a big vertical guy for you, and not like I'm super fast down the seams vertical guy, but I'm going to let my route develop. Once again, perfect marriage with Aaron Rodgers, right? Because Aaron can move around and let those, just buy himself a little more time. D'Angelo can get downfield after his routes develop and jump ball you to death. Right, like he can create that little bit of space. He can find spots within the zone. You can't cover the man for 6 seconds, right? So, and there's D'Angelo, and then there's Malachi. Malachi has the better name of the two. People know Malachi Dupree from LSU. I think D'Angelo is going to be the reason why Dupree maybe doesn't make the team at the end of the year. I like D'Angelo and how he fits in with the Packers offense immediately, like as a rotation type of guy, play immediately type of situation. I love it.
Oh, good. You and I are going to have a fun conversation at the end of this because I'm the captain of Malachi Dupree Mountain. But I like what you said about second reaction. I saw that on film. His scramble drill ability is there, and that's a huge thing for Rodgers. It's very, very important for him, and it's something that is going to be an attribute that gets him on the field right away. I agree. Potentially a guy that could come in and maybe fill that Geronimo Allison role with just a little bit better athlete. The other thing that I always like, and whether it's free agent signings or QBs being drafted, upside for a pass catcher, one of my favorite things is something I call shitty QB-itis. It's kind of my version of ass whoop. He had shitty QB-itis at Purdue. Our friend Corey Jenner-John at Cheesehead TV said the highest completion percentage a Purdue quarterback managed while Yancey was there was 58%. The man did not have anybody throwing him the football. And Malachi Dupree had shitty QB-itis as well, but we'll discuss him a little bit later. Cody, your thoughts on Yancey?
You guys covered most of it. I studied him. I'll say Kofi Amici, Devontae Mays. Just studied them a little bit because they had been brought in for visits, and if you guys obviously are aware of Ted Thompson's tendencies, those are guys he's usually looking to bring as undrafted free agents or late-round guys. So you guys covered pretty much everything on Yancey. I think he does have a chance to stick. Like any young wide receiver coming into an established core, he's going to have to learn to play special teams, and he's going to have to show out on special teams if he wants to earn a spot on the 53 or, more particularly, the 40 after 46. But I like him as a player. He tested decent as an athlete. You see a couple flashes on film that you would think he could be a pretty good player, but he's going to have to earn his keep like any other fifth-rounder.
Jacob, anything to add?
Yeah, one of the first routes I watched him run was that double move post that we used to love so much with Jordy Nelson. So I'm sold, I guess, on that standpoint. So I kind of hope we get to see him run it, whether it's in training camp or don't think I can remember them ever running the shot play, quote unquote, in the preseason, even though everybody and their mother knows the Packers run that play, so they're not really hiding it. But if Yancey can run that route, he's got a good chance to stick. The big thing for both of these receivers that we're going to talk about isn't really so much their fit in the offense so much as it is the fit on special teams.
Yeah, and I think D'Angelo could definitely be a special teamer. Like I said, Jones, Amichia, Mays, I haven't seen enough. So I'll go right back to you, Jacob. If you have anything to say about Aaron Jones, you've got the floor.
Well, I mean, when it comes to the running backs, what I think they did is Zach Cruz from Packers Wire, Cheesehead TV, Packers everything. He's done a little bit of everything, but what he said that I think is fitting for the way the Packers have done their running backs, they drafted 3 of them. Part of me initially thought that was a little bit of overkill, but then you see they didn't keep Christine Michael or Don Jackson around, and then you got these 3 guys that you brought in, and they all do different things, and what they're doing is similar to what the Patriots do with their running backs, and we kind of talked about it during the running back show. Instead of using a high draft pick on a running back, what they've done is high volume late on running backs, and they fit them to certain roles. Jamal Williams is kind of a slasher. Aaron Jones is kind of your third down running back type, and Devontae Mays is between the tackles pounder. They're fitting running backs to specific roles, which is very similar. And Mike McCarthy's talked about this as well, how he watches the Patriots offense and how they do things. And I think you can see this offseason they're doing a lot of things like the Patriots do. The 2 tight end set, Martellus Bennett and Lance Kendricks, fitting running backs a certain way. I mean, there's a lot of things that they're doing, and I think that's what their running back strategy, if you will, lends itself to. So that's what I think as far as the running backs go. As far as Kofi Amiche, I haven't watched a ton of film on him. He's an offensive tackle that they project inside to guard. They actually announced him as a center. It's a Ted Thompson type, so it wasn't surprising at all to see them add some depth to that spot on the offensive line. It'll just be interesting to see. Ross, you were talking about how over the weekend, if the Packers want to keep 8 guys, then you want Spriggs, Amiche, and Kyle Murphy to be the backups. I mean, somebody's got to beat out Don Barclay, and somebody's got to be the backup center. Maybe that's Kofi Amiche. If it's not, then Don Barclay is going to be on this roster again, because Don Barclay right now is still probably your backup center. I'll be interested to see if maybe Kyle Murphy cross-trains there this training camp as well, but I haven't seen a whole lot on him. But Collins left tackle, kicks inside. That's not surprising either.
Cody, anything on Jones, Amichia, Mays?
Can't say enough about Amichia and Mays to give you a good opinion. A couple highlights on Mays. There's that one tough run where he's spinning off of guys in the hole. You like his low center of gravity as he's running. Aaron Jones was also another one of my guys kind of throughout the fall. I go to check out some stats and see who's actually producing, and then I go read up on the player, check his size, and kind of his backstory. And Aaron Jones caught my eye right away. He was one of the best rushers in all of college football last year. You see him do a ton of things on the field as far as catching passes and taking runs to the outside and lowering the shoulder. I think he's probably got a top 5 stiff arm in this entire draft. It's pretty devastating. I think he's going to be a fun runner to kind of pair and put in the mix with everybody. He may have to play some special teams, but I see a role for him on the offense between him, Jamal, and Ty. Mays, I wouldn't be surprised if he was put on the practice squad, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up beating out, one of the other guys. I love the competition. I love the clean slate at the running back in the running back room. Michael was just always more flash and more sizzle than steak, and Don Jackson, of course, was a nobody. So the fact that you give a shot in the arm, some fresh blood in there, I love it. I think it's going to only benefit everybody. I'm praying that one of them, other than Ty improves in pass protection. I tweeted out the quickest one, or the one who does it the best in pass protection is going to be the one who stays on the field the most. So those guys, it's a huge part of what's going to help them stay on the field.
And I like what Jacob said as well, just about, types. I think really Voch is right. Jamal Williams is a feature back. But then you've got the slasher or potentially a third down style a guy in Aaron Jones, and then the hammer in Devontae Mays. I mean, 5'11", 235, it doesn't get much more hammer than that, so that's exciting. Voch, anything on Aaron Jones, Kofi Amici, or Devontae Mays? Did you get a chance to look at any of that?
Well, going last out of all you guys, I think I've run out of things, so I don't think I could. Yeah, I'm playing. I got something to say. Listen, man, Kofi Amici, think about him from South Florida. Yes, he was a left tackle that got moved inside, but it's just the typical. I don't think your feet are good enough to be outside situation, but I've seen him play a little bit inside, and I've said a bunch of you're too big to not be. Nastier than this, right? Like you should be a little better than this, like as big as you are, right? Now, when he does win blocks, when he does get somebody on skates, he can be a bit of an asshole. He can put a forearm in the neck. He can put a knee in the rib. He's that type of dude, and I like that in my offensive mind. But it's rare that he gets somebody to that point. I think he's going to have to work on his lower body strength. He got man arms though. Right? Like, talk about putting on your man arms and pressing somebody. Talk about traits in the sixth round. That's the trait you look for, right? He has those big bare arms, but he lacks lower body strength. You can see that with his drive and explode and ass whoop on the end of blocks. But I ain't really got much to say besides that as far as Kofi Amici, though. Aaron Jones, like y'all said, third round back type of guy. I think he led the nation in like plus 40-yard runs or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like big play dude. Unlike Jamal Adams' big play dudeness, Aaron Jones is that big play dude guy. He'll catch it out of the backfield. Ty Montgomery does that as well. He'll catch it out of the backfield. He's a bit of a slasher. But my favorite, out of Aaron Jones is Devontae Mays. That dude is hilarious to look at. When you look, he puts his body on the line. He's head first. CTE, schmete, one big muscle running over people. I love to watch people just fall off of him. So I'm really hoping he makes the team. If not, there's a nice little place for him in Dallas. But like I said, y'all pretty much touched on everything that needed to be touched on. I think he bench press 400 pounds or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Some crazy number like that. I mean, he has short arms or whatever, so he ain't got that far to go. But powerful dude at running back, to say the least, though. So,
yeah, potentially a goal line back. I mean, they have Ripkowski do it a little bit. Ty Montgomery's 6 foot 216. It's not like he can't run it in, but Devontae Mays will punish people at the 1 yard line. There's no question about that.
Correction. Jamal Williams should not be coming off the field, but I'm gonna leave you alone.
Right? Yeah. I mean, that's you're right. It's the same type of deal. I wouldn't have a fullback do it anymore. And if you have Devontae Mays or Jamal Williams from the 1 yard line, I think that's your answer.
Right.
Devontae just providing kind of a alternative, I guess, really. So now this is where Voch and I are going to have an issue because I love Malachi Dupree
is not fast. He's not strong. He's an inconsistent catcher. He doesn't do anything great, but he gets the job done, though. That's it. He gets the job done. When you throw the ball, he catches it. Sometimes he doesn't. He wins jump balls. Sometimes he doesn't. He wins with a little speed. Depends on his matchup. For the most part, he doesn't. He's an okay blocker. Yes, his quarterback situation was terrible, and I will say having Aaron Rodgers could make Malachi Dupree a damn Pro Bowler. So I'm not, I can't look into the future, right? But college tape. I just didn't see it from Malachi Dupree. I'm gonna let you go. I did kind of cut you off, but
I'm pro Voch right now. Voch, you just nailed it. I'm on your team on this. This Dupree's movement that's sweeping Packers draft Twitter right now, and the second coming of what is it with 7th round picks that just makes us feel like they're going to be these studs. There's a reason he fell to 7th. He's a classic underachiever, great athlete, 5-star kid, yada yada. Elevate the play of your quarterback a little bit. He didn't do that enough for me. Average athlete, sure he can jump, but if you're only jumping to touch some tabs up in a gym, it's not the same as growing up and high point in the football and winning consistently. But Voch just nailed it. You never know with A-Rod. little bit of better coaching. Who's to say what he could become? But I'm just not ready to anoint him like the rest of the Packer people seem to be.
Do I get to talk now?
Ross, hang on.
Hell no, you can't talk now. Malachi Dupree is going to run through the same situation. Okay, go ahead. I'm playing. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
just real quick, because I only have a few quick thoughts when it comes to Dupree. Because you guys are talking about all this stuff. LSU is, with Les Miles, is the worst offense maybe in college football. Like, they may as well run the wishbone.
They're playing 9 on 11.
Yeah, like it's terrible. And I'm not going to say that. I'm not saying Malachi Dupree is Dupree's to replace Janice Christ, but I am going to cut him slack from the standpoint of they ask those quarterbacks to do nothing. Just please, God, don't screw this up. Basically, you guys have seen that. You guys have seen that Les Miles playbook, like where it says run left or run one, run two, pass one, which is like one route, and pass through those graphics that look like old school video games. Have you guys seen those?
Mm-hmm.
That's Les Miles' playbook. Like, that's the whole damn thing. So that is the only bit of slack I guess I can give to Dupree, because they don't ask him to do anything else. So I don't think, not only maybe Dupree has all those problems, but I also think that's a product of the fact that Les Miles is not interested in offense. Les Miles was also not interested in coaching the offense. And I think that Dupree got the hell out of LSU because he knew what the deal was. And they were going to have another bad quarterback. And what's going to happen at LSU this year is we're going to be talking about this really good, star-studded, amazing defense with all these stud defenders that are going to be picked in the top 4 rounds of the NFL draft. And we're going to be talking about how they get blown out by Alabama again and lose probably 3 or 4 games again. Why? Because they don't have a quarterback and they don't have anything that resembles a sophisticated offense because they hired LSU's version of Brady Hoke. Okay, Ross, I am done. You may speak on your guy, Malachi Dupree.
You know what, Ross? Before you go, if I can give you just a little bit of hope, when I go back and watch film on Beckham, I don't really see that dude that plays for the Giants.
That's what the hell I'm talking about.
If I give you a little bit of credit, LSU does something to the. I don't know, but go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
Watch Jarvis Landry too. It's the same thing.
Yeah,
I agree.
Simple offense ever.
That's my issue. Is you're talking about guys like Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry. They had the same problem. And yes, Malachi Dupree, coming out of high school, was the number 1 wide receiver in the country. Does that really mean anything? Not necessarily. He's got average speed. 4.52 is damn near dead average. But we're talking about a 135-inch broad jump, which is elite, and a 39.5-inch vert. And yeah, it might be jumping and grabbing tabs, but you see that ability. And at 6'2", he could be a red zone monster. I mean, he's just a different style of guy. We talk about, I always talk about that old Mike Lombardi thing about you make a basketball team with your wide receiver group. You diversify. You got Devontae Adams out on the wing. Randall Cobb's your point guard. They haven't had the power forward in forever, and I really think that Malachi gives you a chance for the power forward. Now, I understand what's really going to happen. Martellus Bennett's going to be the power forward. I get that. But the ability to potentially have a power forward within the wide receiver group is just so exciting for me. And, I mean, shitty QB-itis is one thing, but going to LSU-itis for a wide receiver is potentially even work. Now, it hasn't worked out. Ruben Randall, maybe that was an Eli problem, but that never happened. I mean, we were waiting for that to happen. That never happened. Ruben Randall never happened. I kind of thought it was going to happen. It didn't happen. But as far just from what I can see on film and what you could have potentially happened with Malachi in a 7th-round pick, I'm just excited because he's not always open. And he still wins those contested catches, but you see that explosive athleticism, just from a testing standpoint, although his 3-cone, wasn't great, but you see that ability to win contested catches. If he gets, and whether it's Jordy or actually just the offensive coaching staff, if they can teach him to separate, that becomes an even bigger problem for defenses.
And I just liked his game more than I liked D'Angelo Yancey. I would put him, if I was to guess, above D'Angelo Yancey as somebody who can or cannot make the team. For me.
Hey, Ross.
Yep.
We should be talking about what his position is going to be rookie year. It's gunner and special teams ace.
Yep.
He has to beat Janis for a roster spot even. He's going to get some opportunities in camp, obviously, to show up, but there's not going to be a ton of them coming in as a seventh rounder. He's not this pampered five-star kid, going to football U down south. You have to earn a spot, and you're going to earn that on special teams. And he has to unseat a good one.
I don't disagree with that. At the same time, who was catching 25-yard passes in Cowboys Stadium in a playoff game? Undrafted free agent Geronimo Allison. So it's not like you can't get on the field on offense if you're good. And if Malachi Dupree is good, I like his ceiling better than I like Geronimo's, and I like it better than I like Yancey, but that's just me, and that's why I said that in the script. I made the joke, Packers Hall of Famer Malachi Dupree. I helped start the movement. Owen Reese continued the movement. Dupree's is pretty fantastic. I just really liked the Dupree pick. It was my second or third favorite pick as far as I was concerned, just from a value standpoint. Because if they'd have taken Malachi Dupree in the fourth round, I would have looked at his testing numbers and looked at his film and be like, all right, that's a TED receiver. It's fine. Whatever. And you took him in the seventh.
You should have been sick if they picked Malachi Dupree in the fourth round. You should have quit on your team. You should have cut your TV off if they picked Malachi Dupree in the fourth. Dupree's? Ugh.
Hey, it's better than Janis Christ.
Fair enough.
All right. We're at the 70-minute mark here, and we're actually at the 90-minute mark because I have to edit in that interview. This might get cut into two parts. We'll see. Well, let's wrap this baby up. Favorite pick, mine was No, I'm kidding. It's not Malachi Dupree. My favorite pick is Vince Beagle, and the reason is because it was free. There was pretty much no reason that the Cleveland Browns had to move up there and provide the Packers with the top pick in the fourth round to get the guy they were already going to get, and he fills a need. Whether he's a hybrid linebacker and they just move Fackrell and Matthews and Beagle all over the place and then keep the rest of the pass rushers on the outside, or whether he actually makes it as an outside linebacker like Matthews did the first 3-4 years of his career. I think from a value standpoint, I just felt like Beagle could have been a second-round pick. And you're right. If the man's name was Vincent Watt, first-round pick, I'm not saying he's a first-round guy, but where they got him and the need that he filled on the team, I can't not be excited. I think it's a good value. Voch, you already said Jamal Williams.
Yes, sir.
Cody?
Wake up, Cody.
Yeah, that's a mute button issue right there. I don't want to go too redundant. I love the Kevin King pick because it just made a lot of sense. But, hell, Vince Beagle was the pick you acquired. It addressed the position of need going into day 3. Once that pick was made, it was kind of house money. After that, you addressed the secondaries, mainly the speed in there. You got yourself a high upside talented D lineman, and then you go and get yourself an edge rusher. And you just gave some good life to your defense. So I think the Vince Beagle pick, because it was acquired and the value was great, addressed a position of need.
Jacob, your favorite pick?
Kevin King, because of what it represents. I think one of the worries we talked about in our last pre-show meeting was maybe the Packers resting on their laurels or resting on the fact that, Demarius Randall and Quentin Rollins are former top 60 picks, and they need to believe in those guys, and that's fine. I know Jim Harbaugh is not exactly a favorite among the Packers fan base, but one of my favorite things he always talks about is meritocracy, meaning I don't even know if that's a real word or if he made it up, but what it means to him is he who has the most merit is the one who gets on the field. By getting Devon House and Kevin King, Demarius Randall and Quentin Rollins, if they prove themselves, great. The Packers have a deep and talented secondary. Ladarius Gunter as well. If those guys prove themselves in camp, that's great. then the Packers have a deep and talented secondary. If they don't, if they still struggle from last year, then the Packers have a lot of options to move around. But Kevin King represents a willingness to move toward competition and a willingness to push guys instead of putting them, and I've discussed this, putting them in positions that they should never be put in. Ladarius Gunter should never have to guard or shadow Des Bryant for an entire playoff game. Des Bryant is going to embarrass him, and he did throughout the course of that divisional playoff game. Had it not been for the brilliance of Aaron Rodgers, we would have been talking about that more and more and more throughout this offseason. And I think we've talked about it plenty because of the way Julio Jones did it anyways. But what Kevin King does is adds depth and talent to that secondary, and it also proves that the Packers are trying to do and give competition in their secondary. So for that reason, they moved down. They got a free pick for Vince Beagle, and that's great. But Kevin King is my favorite pick because of what it represents.
All right. Least favorite pick. I don't think anybody's gone down this road yet. Mine is Josh Jones. I understand that I already made the case for it and that Burnett's going to be more of a linebacker and that Jones is a freak athlete. And if they're trying to get bigger, stronger, and faster, Josh Jones is a hell of a start. But I'm not sure I saw the need at 61. And I'm not sure I love the film of the player at 61. Beyond that, to be honest with you, I really liked this draft. It sounds homerish as all hell, but I don't have enough of a problem with any of the picks to call him my least favorite pick. So there it is, Josh Jones. Cody, your least favorite pick.
I think that's one of my more confusing picks, but it's starting to make more and more sense when you hear about his role. I like the addition of him physically and all that. So I'll just go Devontae Mays. He just seemed like the classic undrafted free agent type. Terrible year last year, dealing with injuries. Flashed in 2015. He just brought him in for a visit. I would imagine most teams had a grade of him as an undrafted free agent. So in any case, I'm nitpicking here. What was he? Ended up being a six-round pick or something like that. So it's really not that big a deal. And like I mentioned earlier, I don't mind cleaning house in the running back meeting room and putting new people in there. So, as far as value, I think, they're probably my least favorite there.
Yeah, I think he was actually a 7th-round pick. So in the 7th round, you're basically just taking an undrafted free agent that you really, really want, as far as that's concerned. But it's a valid answer, certainly. Jacob, your least favorite pick from the weekend.
Wow, it's hard to say. Because like you said, there's a lot of guys. I don't really have a huge problem with a lot. But, Montravius Adams has got to be, I guess, my answer, just because I thought there were other directions they could have gone with that pick. That's nothing against the guy. Just when you pick a defensive lineman at a position where you only play 2 guys the majority of the time, I know I just mentioned the player comps not being a huge deal. It matters, Ross, not to completely piss all over your piece. It matters enough, but it's not the sole thing. But Adams, he's a talented enough player, but I don't know if I love it enough for the 93rd overall selection. And I think that, you could have gone some other directions. I know Vince Beagle ended up being your pick in the 3rd round, or maybe a pass rusher a little earlier than the 4th round could have been a thing. Instead of a 25 or 24-year-old guy in the middle round. It seems like the Packers pick a really old guy every year. It seems to be a new trend. I don't know if 2 years, I guess, with Fackrell and Beagle is a trend. But Montravius Adams, I guess, can be my least favorite pick. Defensive line's never going to be a pick that has sex appeal. But hopefully Adams proves the people wrong with that. But again, like you said, there's not a whole lot to disagree with as far as what they did in this draft. I like the Jones pick because it adds speed and athleticism to the secondary. And the rest of the picks, I think they got good value for where they were at. I guess you could argue that 3 running backs is a little bit of overkill. But like you kind of mentioned, 6th and 7th round picks, those are, especially the 7th round, those are just priority free agents anyways. So I don't really want to pick one of those guys. So I guess, Montravius Adams is my least favorite pick if I had to pick one.
Voch, your least favorite Packers pick of the weekend?
Kevin King. And I can explain. I'm not the biggest fan of trading around first-round picks, right? I feel like if you want to trade out of a pick, I feel like you lose talent trying to gather more picks. And I feel like if you're trading into a pick, you're giving up a second or a third or a fourth, which is a starter in this draft or whatever. So I think if I'm the Green Bay Packers, and if it was me, Ted probably won't do this, but if it was me, I would have stayed at 29. I would have picked a guy like Reuben Foster. I would have picked a guy like Malik McDowell. I'm on record for being a huge Malik McDowell fan, right? But when you trade out of 29, you lose out on T.J. Watt, Reuben Foster, even David Njoku. If y'all like David Njoku like that, but you miss out on those type of players. And when you get to 33, and Reuben Foster sitting right, Malik McDowell is sitting there on the board. I know I just heard you say that there's not a sexy D-line pick. Damn it, Malik McDowell is a sexy D-line pick. Now, like I said, Ted probably wouldn't do this. But Voch Lombardi, the GM, would prefer Reuben or Malik opposed to Kevin King. And then at 61 or at 93, I would have gotten a guy like Cordray Tankersley. I think Cordray Tankersley is specifically built for what the Green Bay Packers like to do. I like Kevin King in all of his 6'3"-ness, but I think Cordray Tankersley is a better man cover guy. I think Cordray is better, has better polish, has better from the neck upness in a cover one man coverage type of situation. It's just that Kevin King is a better tackler. He's more willing. He has higher upside. He's taller, right? He's longer. That's what Kevin King has better. But if you could have walked away with Reuben Foster and, still got Josh Jones at 61 and Cordray Tankersley at 93 or something like that, you would have gotten your corner, your pass rusher, and your safety. So y'all may not agree with me, but that's just how I look at it. But I like the pick, though. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Kevin King is not a good pick. I'm not saying he's not going to work out for the Packers. I can't see into the future. I don't play a character on TV that does. But I don't like moving away from 29, and I think there was a better player there at 33. Ted probably wouldn't take it, but I would, though.
Fair enough. All right, guys, this is an old bit from the benches because it's a podcast and because podcasts live on the internet. There are no gray areas. This was either the best draft ever or the worst draft ever. I'm going to go first. This was the best draft ever. Cody?
Best draft ever.
Jacob?
Best draft ever.
Voch?
It was terrible. Cowboy up.
All right.
Cowboys suck.
And on that note, we'd like to thank Voch for coming on. You bring so much energy, passion, flavor to the show. We really appreciate it. Cody, Jacob, I think this will probably be our last hurrah for a while, so I'd like to thank you two for doing this with me. It was a lot of fun to go through the offseason and get ready for the draft and talk free agency and have actual free agency to talk to or talk about for the first time. That's really exciting stuff. We're probably going to have to split this thing into two, so I'm probably going to have to record some intros and outros and stuff. But this was, this was 77 minutes of drafty goodness, and that's always wonderful. So one last time for the boys of the War Room podcast. Thanks, everybody.
Wait, time. One thing, please. One thing. Can I say this? One thing. Everybody moving forward in your draft process, I want y'all to trust your own opinion, okay? I had a conversation with this guy the other day. He was talking to draft. He said, Voch Lombardi, I don't agree with you. I said, why? He said, well, because this other dude from this website said this about player A being better than player B. Guys, I encourage you to do your own research, to watch your own film. Don't watch highlight tapes because they only show you the highlights. If you watch a Montrezl Adams highlight tape, that dude is a Dominican suit, okay? But when you watch the full, but when you watch the full picture, when you do the homework yourself, when you trust your eyes, you see what you really get in a player. I don't want y'all to go out there trusting mainstream guys that's not showing work. When Warren Sapp comes out and says Myles Garrett is not worth the number 1 pick, and we haven't seen Warren Sapp not watch any film, don't listen to Warren Sapp. Trust your own eyes. Show your work like math class. It's Voch Lombardi, man. That's all I had to say.
All right. That's a hell of a note to end it on. Guys, one last time for the War Room Podcast. Thanks for listening, and go Pack Go.